Title: My Hero Academia, Ravenfall. Genre: action/superhero/drama. Main character: Raven Mitsuki. Role: pro hero from Korea. Setting: Japan, following a villain's escape across borders. Tone: dark, mysterious, with intense action and emotional depth. Part 1: The Black Arrival. The wind over Mizutofu carried a chill that morning. Not from weather, but from the quiet presence that walked through the UA gates. Clad in a sleek black coat, long obsidian hair flowing like shadows behind her, Raven Mitsuki stepped onto the campus grounds, her boots clicking with every calm step. Smoky gray eyes scanned the school as if calculating its every vulnerability. Her aura was cold, precise, unreadable. Students whispered from afar. "Who's that? She doesn't look like a teacher. Pro hero, maybe?" She didn't respond. She never did. From the entrance, a familiar face approached, disheveled, half awake, scarf dragging slightly behind him. Shota Aizawa. Or to her eraser head. He stopped a few steps away from her, arms crossed. His tired gaze met hers, and something rare passed between them, familiarity. "Still dramatic with your entrances," Aizawa muttered, the faintest smirk tugging his lips. Raven's lips curved just slightly. "Still alive, I see." Aizawa rolled his eyes. "Barely." The two stood silently, the kind of silence only old allies shared. They weren't warm, but they didn't need to be. There was respect layered over years of missions, fights, and secrets neither ever spoke of. "He's here, isn't he?" Raven finally asked. Aizawa nodded. "Spectre. He was spotted 2 nights ago in Shibuya. Japan's jurisdiction now, but we could use your help." Raven's eyes narrowed. "You don't need help. You need someone willing to do what others won't." Aizawa didn't argue. He knew she was right. "Follow me," he said. "Principal Nizu's expecting you. The staff's already on edge knowing you're here." She tilted her head. "Good. They should be." As the two old comrades walked toward the main building, the clouds seemed to grow darker. Something terrible had crossed the sea. And Raven Mitsuki had followed. Part 2: Echoes of the Past. The room was dim, tucked deep beneath UA, a level reserved for high-level intel briefings and classified hero operations. Security scans passed over Raven Mitsuki without resistance. Technology recognized her, but more than that, feared her. Inside, projections flickered to life. A holographic profile lit up the dark with cold, clinical clarity. Subject: Spectre. Status: Escaped. Origin: Korea. Threat level: S rank. Quirk: Phantom Step, allows instantaneous teleportation within a limited radius, leaving behind shadow echoes to confuse and mislead. Difficult to track. Nearly impossible to catch. Raven stood before the image, arms crossed, silent. Nizu spoke first from his perch beside the display. "Welcome, Raven. I understand this case is personal." Her eyes remained locked on the screen. "He was mine." The room went quiet. Aizawa leaned back against the wall, watching her with that unreadable expression of his. "He was your trainee, wasn't he?" Nizu asked. Raven didn't answer right away. Flashbacks flickered through her mind. A younger man laughing beside her on a rooftop. Training sessions at midnight. A promise made in the rain. A scream in the dark. "His name was Hanul," she said at last. "Bright. Talented. Loyal. I believed in him." She stepped closer to the projection. Her voice grew cold. "Then he killed 6 heroes and disappeared." Nizu frowned. "We believe he was manipulated. The evidence suggests." "I don't care," Raven cut in. "I'm not here to play detective. I'm here to stop him." Aizawa finally spoke. "You want revenge?" "No," Raven said, eyes narrowing. "I want closure." She turned toward them both. Let me do what I came here for. I'll track him, corner him, and end this before more bodies drop. Nizu exchanged a glance with Aizawa. Then we'll support you, the principal said. Under one condition. Raven raised an eyebrow. You'll work with a team. Japanese heroes and students will be affected by this. We need to keep them in the loop. Students, she echoed, eyes narrowing. They'll be watching either way, Aizawa said. Might as well teach them something real. Raven sighed. Fine. Just don't slow me down. As she turned to leave, the hologram of Spectre flickered one last time. His face, once familiar, was now a mask of betrayal. The hunt had begun. And for Raven Mitsuki, this was more than duty. It was redemption. Part 2.5, Midnight Introduction. It was after hours at UA, but Class 1A had been called back to the training hall for an emergency assembly. Most of the students arrived groggy and confused. Bakugo was already irritated. If this is another surprise test, I swear. Chill, Bakugo, Kaminari muttered. It's probably just a warning or something. Not. The room buzzed with questions until Aizawa entered, his usual scowl in place. Eyes front, he said flatly. You're about to meet a special guest. Treat her with respect. The doors opened. In walked a tall woman dressed in sleek black. Her long black hair swayed behind her like silk, and her presence silenced the room instantly. Smoky gray eyes scanned each student like they were pieces on a board. She said nothing at first, she didn't have to. Todoroki blinked. She's intense. Yayorozu whispered, she looks like a villain. Midoriya's notebook was already in hand, scribbling furiously. Unknown pro hero. Foreign. Calm and unreadable expression. Likely skilled. Tattoo on her collarbone, possible symbol of origin? Aizawa cleared his throat. This is Raven Mitsuki. Pro hero from Korea. Hero name Obsidian Veil. She's operating in Japan for a short time on an active mission. Raven stepped forward slowly. Her voice, when it came, was calm and razor sharp. I'm not here to teach you. I'm not here to inspire you. She let her eyes drift across the room. Even Bakugo was quiet. I'm here because someone dangerous slipped through the cracks of a broken system. If you're smart, you'll stay out of my way. Then, a pause. Her eyes met Midoriya's, so full of curiosity and determination. And then Uraraka's. Then Todoroki. One by one, her gaze shifted, lingering a second longer on the ones who reminded her of who she used to be. But if you must get involved, she continued. Then watch. Listen. Learn. Because this mission isn't about grades or rankings. It's about survival. She turned on her heel without waiting for applause or questions. The door clicked behind her. Silence. Then Kirishima exhaled. Man, she's cool. Part 3, Uneasy Allies. The following day, Raven found herself in the UA Hero Training Grounds. Her dark figure stood tall among the sprawling grounds, a stark contrast to the vibrant enthusiasm of Class 1A. She wasn't here to make friends, but it seemed inevitable that the students would try to test her resolve. She caught glimpses of their faces, curious, eager, some frightened. Most of them still hadn't shaken the tension from her abrupt introduction. Todoroki, the cool and collected half-and-half student, observed her carefully. He'd seen many pro heroes before, but none like Raven. There was an eerie calm in her every movement, something that spoke of death, of finality. You were a part of the team that stopped the Side Serpent, right? Todoroki asked, his voice steady. Raven turned to face him, her eyes calculating. Yes. The one that almost destroyed half the city? Raven's expression didn't change. Almost isn't enough. There was no warmth in her words, but Todoroki didn't expect any. He'd been in the field long enough to know when to trust silence. Bakugo, ever the firebrand, marched up next to Todoroki, fists clenched. Why are you here? He demanded. You're just gonna hide in the shadows and let us handle everything? Raven's gaze flickered over him, a brief flash of amusement passing in her cold eyes. If you want to test me, do it on your own time. I'm here for a reason. Aizawa stepped forward, stepping between them. Enough. Raven's mission comes first. If you want to get in her way, it'll be at your own risk. Raven didn't even flinch at Bakugo's outburst. She turned to Aizawa. I don't need their help, she said bluntly. I don't think they need yours either, Aizawa replied. Raven raised an eyebrow, but before she could respond, Nizu's voice came through the intercom. Raven, you're needed at the control room immediately. We've got new intel on Spectre. Without another word, Raven turned sharply and walked off the grounds. The students, still processing the encounter, watched her leave. Man, she's intense, Kirishima muttered. Yeah, but that's the kind of intensity that gets results, Todoroki said, his eyes still on the door Raven had exited through. Midoriya nodded, jotting something down in his notebook. She's definitely hiding something. But if she's here, it means Spectre's a bigger threat than we thought. Part 4, Into the Shadows. Raven walked through the sterile hallways beneath UA, the only sounds being the soft thud of her boots. She reached the control room, where Nizu, Aizawa, and several other high-ranking heroes were gathered. We've found him, Nizu said, his voice grave. Raven stepped forward, eyes scanning the large digital map projected before her. There were several blinking red dots across the city, all of them corresponding to potential Spectre sightings. Multiple locations, Raven noted. He's splitting himself up. Trying to throw us off. Aizawa nodded. His quirk isn't easy to track, but we've been narrowing it down. We need you to lead the strike team. You know his movements better than anyone. Raven's eyes locked on the map. I know him better than any of you. I'll go alone. Aizawa frowned. You've got no backup. No one can predict where he'll strike next. I'll handle it, Raven replied. She turned to Nizu. Send your students out if you need to, but this is my fight. Nizu hesitated for a moment before nodding. I understand. We'll provide support from here. Be careful, Raven. Raven's lips curled into a small, rare smile. Careful isn't in my vocabulary. As she turned to leave, Aizawa's voice stopped her. Don't forget, you're not alone. Not anymore. Raven paused but didn't look back. I never needed anyone. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't true. Part 5, Spectre's Play. The city was alive with movement, but Raven moved like a shadow. The night was her ally as she traced the echoes of Spectre's quirk through the urban maze. She'd been tracking him for hours, but there was still no sign of him. He was too good at hiding, too elusive. Suddenly, a flicker in the air. A shadow moved where there should have been none. Raven's hand instinctively went to her side, pulling out a dagger infused with her quirk. The faint sound of footsteps behind her. I see you've been keeping up, Raven said, her voice low and cold. Spectre's laugh echoed in the distance. You always were the smart one, Raven. But you can't stop what's coming. The shadow warped and shifted, and Raven's eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. With a flick of her wrist, she hurled the dagger into the shadows. It vanished before it could hit anything, but Raven had already moved. In an instant, she was behind Spectre, her blade at his throat. He didn't flinch. You're fast, he said, turning his head slightly. But it won't matter. Raven's eyes flashed with intensity. I'm done playing games. With a flick of her wrist, she unleashed her quirk, Obsidian Veil, creating a dark aura that enveloped both her and Spectre. The shadows twisted, pulling him in, and in the heart of the darkness, Raven finally faced him. I don't want to kill you, Hanul, she whispered, using his real name for the first time in years. But I will if I have to. Part 6, A Glimpse of the Past. Spectre's laugh echoed in the dark, but this time it was hollow, tinged with bitterness. You still don't get it, do you, Raven? It's not about power or revenge. It's about freedom. The kind you can't even imagine. Raven's hand tightened around her dagger. Your freedom means death for everyone else. No, Spectre's voice grew more intense. My freedom means release. Release from the chains they put on us, the expectations, the missions, the lies. Raven's cold eyes locked onto his. You were a hero once. Don't forget that. A flicker of something crossed Spectre's face, something close to regret. But it was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. You were my mentor, Raven. And you betrayed me just like the rest of them, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The words cut deeper than she had expected. But she steeled herself. I never betrayed you, she said firmly. I gave you everything. You made the choice. A sudden movement, Spectre disappeared in a blur, his teleportation quirk at work. Raven cursed under her breath, immediately shifting into her obsidian veil form, allowing her to sense his movements even in the darkness. But this time, Spectre didn't vanish completely. He left behind a trap. A pulse of darkness exploded, sending Raven flying back into the concrete wall. The impact knocked the wind out of her, but she quickly regained her footing. You're not getting away this time, she growled, her eyes flashing with determination. But Spectre's words lingered in her mind, haunting her. You betrayed me. Part 7, The Ties That Bind. Raven's body was bruised from the impact, but the pain was nothing compared to the gnawing feeling inside her. Spectre's words echoed in her mind as she stood, slowly brushing herself off. The shadows around her swirled in response to her frustration, the dark aura thickening. I'm not the one who betrayed you, she muttered to herself, though the doubt lingered. The night was silent, but Raven could feel Spectre's presence, lurking just out of sight. He was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Her hand went to the comms device in her ear. Aizawa, I need backup, she said, her voice steady despite the growing tension. Understood. Stay sharp, Raven, came the response. Suddenly, a ripple of shadow expanded in front of her, and Spectre's form materialized from the darkness, his face smirking. You called for backup, he taunted. You still don't get it, do you? You can't trust anyone, not even yourself. Raven's grip tightened around the dagger, her eyes narrowing. I trust myself just fine. But there was something in Spectre's eyes, something that made her hesitate for the briefest of moments. He reached out, a dark tendril forming from his hand and snaking toward her. This is your last chance, Raven. Join me. Together, we can tear down this broken system. His words resonated with her more than she cared to admit. She had seen the flaws in the hero society, the cracks in the very system she had devoted her life to. But she had never given in to the darkness. Not once. No, Raven said, her voice like ice. I'm not like you. With a swift motion, she sent a blast of her quirk into the shadows, forcing them to retract. Spectre barely flinched, but Raven took her chance. She moved in a blur, appearing before him and striking with precision. The dagger sunk into the shadows, but Spectre was already gone, his form dissipating into nothingness. Predictable, he mocked from behind her. Raven spun, but this time she was ready. The obsidian veil surrounded her, twisting into jagged shards of shadow that sliced through the air. Spectre's form flickered as he dodged, but Raven was relentless. You can't outrun me, she snarled, her eyes glowing with intensity. Part 8, The Lost Memories. The battle raged on, each strike more intense than the last. Raven's breath came in shallow gasps as she pressed her advantage. Spectre was fast, too fast, but she was relentless. Every time she thought she had him, he slipped away. Then, in a brief moment of clarity, Raven saw something. A fleeting image, a memory buried deep within her mind. A younger version of herself, standing alongside Spectre. The two of them had fought together, trained together. They had been a team. The memory was hazy, fragmented, but Raven could see it clearly enough. They had been friends, partners even. So how had things gone so wrong? The vision faded as quickly as it had come, and Raven's focus snapped back to the present. Get out of my head, she shouted, her voice cracking. Spectre's laugh was cold, distant. You've always been in denial, Raven. You can't bury the past forever. Raven's heart pounded, and she felt the weight of the memory pressing down on her. But she couldn't allow herself to be distracted. She couldn't afford to lose focus now. With a burst of speed, she launched herself at Spectre once more, her dagger aimed at his heart. This time, she wouldn't hesitate. She couldn't. But Spectre anticipated her move. He vanished into the shadows, reappearing behind her in an instant. You'll never win, Raven, he whispered, his breath cold against her ear. You've already lost. Part 9, The Price of Power. Raven staggered forward, disoriented by Spectre's words. She gritted her teeth, fighting to maintain control of her mind and her quirk. She couldn't let him get inside her head. Not now. Her shadowy aura pulsed violently, reacting to her emotional turmoil. The obsidian veil expanded around her, threatening to engulf everything in its wake. But even as the shadows swirled, Raven felt something weakening inside her. Spectre had a point. Her past, her decisions, everything she had believed in, was it all a lie? No. She couldn't let him win. I won't fall for your mind games, Raven muttered, steadying herself. I've made my choices. You've made yours. Choices? Spectre's voice echoed from all sides. You think your choices matter? You're just another puppet, dancing for the heroes who control you. You're wrong, Raven said, her voice cold. I'm not controlled. I'm not your tool. With a defiant shout, she summoned all the power of her quirk, unleashing a devastating shockwave of shadows that ripped through the streets. The force of the blast tore apart buildings, sending shockwaves that could be felt for miles. When the dust settled, Spectre was gone. But Raven stood there, panting, her body trembling. She had won, for now. The city was still, the only sound the distant wail of sirens. Raven's hands were stained with the remnants of her own quirk, the darkness that had consumed her life. She had pushed herself to the limit, but at what cost? She knew the answer. Spectre had shown her the truth. The system she had sworn to protect was broken. And now, there was no turning back. Part 10, Reflections in the Dark. Raven stood at the edge of the ruins, her expression unreadable. The battle had ended, but the fight was far from over. She had stopped Spectre, for now, but she could feel the storm coming. As she gazed out over the city, a faint voice interrupted her thoughts. You did well, Aizawa's voice came through her combs. Raven didn't respond immediately. The weight of his words hung in the air, but her thoughts were elsewhere. I'm not done, she said quietly. Spectre may be gone, but there's more to this than just him. A long silence followed before Aizawa replied. I know. And you're not alone in this. We'll find a way to fix it. Raven's lips twitched into a ghost of a smile. I don't need anyone's help. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew that wasn't true. The darkness within her was not something she could face alone. Part 11, A Shadow's Burden. Raven stared into the horizon, her eyes focused on nothing in particular. The city below her, once a symbol of justice and strength, now seemed fragile, vulnerable, just like her. She had spent so many years buried in her role as a pro-hero, doing what was asked of her, believing in the righteousness of her cause. But now, as the truth began to unravel, she could no longer ignore the cracks in the system she had sworn to protect. A faint shiver ran through her as the wind picked up, carrying the scent of ash from the destruction she had caused. The shadows around her seemed to whisper, pulling at her consciousness. The darkness she wielded, the very thing that had made her strong, was now her greatest weakness. Focus, Raven, she muttered to herself, her voice quiet but firm. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the creeping doubt that threatened to consume her. But Spectre's words lingered, echoing in her mind. You've already lost. No. She wouldn't let that be true. She couldn't let him be right. With a deep breath, Raven stepped forward, the weight of her past settling heavily on her shoulders. Every step she took felt like a reminder of the choices she had made, the path she had walked. But it was the only path she knew. "Raven," a voice called from behind her, breaking her reverie. She turned to find Aizawa approaching, his expression serious but not without a hint of concern. "You've been out here for hours. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Raven replied, though she knew it wasn't true. "Just thinking." Aizawa studied her for a moment, his gaze unwavering. "You can't do this alone, Raven." "I know you think you can, but you don't have to carry this burden by yourself." Raven didn't answer right away. She couldn't admit it, not even to herself, but there was a part of her that was tired of fighting, tired of the constant weight of expectation. She had always been the one to stand alone, the one to face the darkness without hesitation. But now, that darkness was closing in, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep it at bay. "I've always been alone," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Aizawa's eyes softened. "You don't have to be. We're all in this together." Raven looked at him, her gaze searching his face for any sign of insincerity. But all she saw was a genuine concern, a sincerity that she wasn't sure she deserved. She turned away, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. "Maybe, but I'm not sure that's enough anymore." Aizawa said nothing for a moment, letting the silence hang between them. Finally, he spoke again. "Then let's figure it out together. You don't have to carry the weight of the world alone, Raven." Part 12, Cracks in the Foundation. Raven's heart pounded as she walked through the ruined streets, her mind racing with the recent conversation. She hadn't expected Aizawa to be so understanding. It made something inside her stir, a part of her that had long since been buried. But the more she thought about it, the more complicated it became. The hero she had trusted, the system she had sworn to uphold, what was left of it now? Spectre's words had planted a seed of doubt, and now that seed was growing, sprouting in places she couldn't ignore. As she walked, a familiar figure appeared in the distance. It was Nyx, the emotionless student Raven had met some time ago. Despite her cold demeanor, Nyx had a certain determination about her, something Raven couldn't help but respect. "Raven," Nyx called, her voice as indifferent as ever. Raven paused, watching her approach. "What is it, Nyx?" "There's been another attack." "Spectre's not done with you yet," Nyx said, her tone flat. Raven's eyes narrowed. "I know." She had expected this. Spectre would come again. He wouldn't stop until he had driven her to the edge, until she questioned everything she stood for. "Then we're going to stop him," Nyx continued. "But this time, you're not alone." Raven didn't respond immediately. She wasn't sure if Nyx's offer was born out of duty or something deeper, but it didn't matter. They had a common enemy, and that was enough for now. "We'll see," Raven said finally, turning away. "Let's end this." Part 13, The Gathering Storm. The sky had darkened by the time Raven and Nyx arrived at the abandoned warehouse where the attack was reported. Shadows loomed in every corner, thick and heavy, as though they were alive. Raven could feel the presence of Spectre before she even saw him, his dark aura suffocating the air around them. "Ready?" Nyx asked, her voice cool and composed. Raven didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her body was already moving, her shadow powers surging as she scanned the area. From the shadows, Spectre appeared, his form twisting in and out of focus. His voice echoed from all directions. "You think you can stop me, Raven? You think you've won?" Raven's eyes flashed. "I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me." Spectre's laughter filled the space, cold and empty. "You've already made your choice, Raven. There's no going back now." With a flick of his wrist, the shadows around them erupted, forming tendrils that lashed out toward Raven and Nyx. Raven reacted instinctively, her shadow blades cutting through the air as she blocked the incoming attack. Nyx, too, moved with precision, her own quirk enhancing her agility as she fought alongside Raven. But Spectre was relentless, his shadow manipulations more powerful than ever. The air around them seemed to close in, suffocating. "You can't escape your past, Raven," Spectre taunted. "It's already too late." Raven's grip tightened around her weapon. I've made my peace with my past. But you won't make me your puppet. With a roar, she released a burst of energy, forcing the shadows back as Nyx pressed forward, her attacks sharp and quick. Together, they moved as one, the darkness around them nothing more than a fleeting threat. Part 14, Beyond the Veil. The battle raged on, but Raven could feel it, the breaking point was near. Spectre's strength was waning, but so was her own. She had pushed herself too far. Her body ached, her energy running low. But there was no turning back now. The final confrontation was at hand. Raven! Nyx called, her voice breaking through the chaos. Raven turned just in time to see Nyx lunge forward, her quirk empowering her strikes. Together, they could finally take down Spectre. With a final, decisive move, Raven drove her dagger through the heart of the shadows, her power exploding in a blaze of darkness. The fight was over. Part 15, Aftermath. The silence that followed the battle was almost suffocating. The ground around them was scorched, the remains of Spectre's shadowy form dissipating into the air. Raven stood panting, her body trembling from the strain of the fight. Her heart raced, and for the first time in years, she felt vulnerable. Nyx stepped beside her, her eyes cold but focused, as always. Is it really over? Raven didn't answer at first. The shadows had vanished, but the weight of everything she had been through still pressed heavily on her. Spectre was gone, but his words echoed in her mind. There's no going back now. Had she truly won, or had she merely postponed the inevitable? Raven turned toward Nyx. For now, it is. The younger woman nodded, sensing the unspoken thoughts that lingered in the air. You're not alone in this, Raven. Not anymore. Raven's gaze softened for the briefest moment, before she quickly regained her composure. We'll see about that. Part 16, The Price of Power. As the days passed, the city began to rebuild itself. The damage from Spectre's attack was substantial, but not insurmountable. Raven found herself back in the pro-hero headquarters, preparing for the inevitable inquiries about the battle and Spectre's defeat. She had always been a silent figure in the hero world, her cold demeanor and solitary nature earning her respect, but also distance. But now, something had changed. Raven could feel it in the way the others looked at her, in the way the shadows seemed to move differently when she was around. As she sat at her desk, reviewing reports, the door to her office creaked open. Aizawa stepped inside, his usual calm expression replacing his earlier concern. You're doing better, I assume, he said, though it wasn't a question. Raven didn't look up, her fingers idly tracing the edge of her desk. I'm fine, she replied, though the words felt hollow. The truth was, she wasn't sure anymore. Aizawa took a few steps closer, his eyes assessing her with the same intense gaze he always had. You don't have to go through this alone, Raven. It's not just about defeating Spectre. It's about what comes next. She finally met his gaze, her ruby eyes locking with his. And what comes next, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. We rebuild. We move forward, Aizawa said simply. And we make sure this never happens again. Raven's heart ached. Moving forward. Could she do that? Could she really leave everything behind, the pain, the trauma, the years of solitude, and just live? I don't know if I can, she murmured, her voice betraying a vulnerability she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Aizawa stepped closer, his presence offering an anchor. Then let's take it one step at a time. Together. Part 17, Reflection. Raven stood before the mirror, her eyes staring into her own reflection. She had always hated this moment, hated seeing the person she had become. But now, as the woman in the mirror gazed back at her, Raven felt something different. She felt human. The weight of her past still hung heavily on her shoulders, but for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Her friends, her allies, they were all there. Aizawa, Nyx, and even the others, everyone was trying to help her, trying to give her a chance to heal. But could she truly heal? Could she ever be whole again? Raven reached up, touching the scar on her face, a reminder of the many battles she had fought. Her heart ached as she remembered all the times she had pushed others away, afraid that anyone who got too close would become a target. But now, the thought of being alone was more unbearable than ever. Maybe, she whispered to her reflection, maybe I can try. Part 18, A New Beginning. The next morning, Raven stood before the Pro Hero Council, ready to face whatever questions they had about the battle with Spectre. She had always been a silent presence in these meetings, but today was different. The council members, stern and unwavering, looked to her expectantly. Raven Mitsuki, your actions have been commendable, one of them said. However, there are concerns about your state of mind. Raven's eyes flickered with a hint of annoyance, but she held her tongue. The last thing she needed was for them to treat her like a broken weapon. We've reviewed your record, the council member continued, and it's clear that you've been through a great deal. Perhaps it's time for a change in approach. Raven frowned. I don't need your pity. Not pity, Raven, the council member replied. But a chance to heal. A chance to be more than just a weapon in the shadows. The words stung, but they also stirred something in Raven. For so long, she had been the instrument of destruction, the one who worked alone in the dark. But now, the idea of being part of something greater, it didn't seem so terrifying. I'm not broken, she said firmly, her voice steady. But I'm willing to try. To do more than just fight. The council exchanged glances, and for the first time, they seemed to nod in agreement. Very well. We'll arrange for you to take on a new role. A mentor position. Raven's eyes widened slightly. A mentor? Indeed, the council member replied. It's time to share your knowledge, to pass on what you've learned. The next generation of heroes will need someone like you. Raven hesitated. Could she really be a mentor? Could she guide others when she was still so broken inside? But as she looked around the room at the faces of the council, at the glimmer of hope in their eyes, something shifted within her. Maybe this was her chance to rebuild, not just the city, but herself. I'll accept, she said quietly, her voice full of resolve. Part 19, The Road Ahead. The days that followed were a whirlwind of changes. Raven took on her new role as a mentor, training the next generation of heroes, imparting her knowledge and experience to those who would follow in her footsteps. It wasn't easy, her past was still a constant presence, but with every student she helped, Raven felt a little more like the person she had always wanted to be. She wasn't alone anymore. And that was enough. Part 20, The Final Raven. Raven stood atop a building, gazing out over the city as the sun set on the horizon. Her new life had just begun, and though the road ahead was uncertain, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The darkness that once consumed her was now something she could control. And the future, while still unknown, felt more hopeful than it ever had before. With a soft smile, Raven closed her eyes, allowing herself to embrace the weight of everything she had survived and everything she was yet to become. Part 21, The Final Raven. Months passed, and Raven's new life as a mentor continued. She had taken on students with varying levels of skill, each one challenging her in different ways. Some were eager, hungry to prove themselves. Others were more reserved, like she had once been. Through them, Raven found herself reflecting on her own past, on the girl she once was and the woman she had become. Despite the progress, some shadows still lingered. The pain, the memories, they hadn't vanished completely. But she had learned how to live with them, to integrate them into her new identity rather than letting them define her. It was late one evening when Raven received a summons to a secluded location. It wasn't an emergency. It wasn't a crisis. It was something else. The familiar, cold voice on the phone had told her it was time for a final meeting, one that would close the chapter on everything that had happened, on Spectre, her trauma, and her future. The location was an abandoned building, far from the bustling city streets. The door creaked as Raven pushed it open, her footsteps echoing on the cracked floor. There, standing in the shadows, was someone she hadn't expected to see, someone who had been a specter in her life for far too long. "Spectre," Raven said, her voice a mix of disbelief and resolve. "You're alive." Spectre, or what remained of him, stepped forward. His form was less tangible now, like a specter of his former self, but his presence was unmistakable. He was weaker than before, but the malice in his eyes hadn't faded. "You were never meant to defeat me, Raven," he hissed, his voice a warped version of its former self. "You can never truly escape your past. I will always be there, just like you will." Raven took a step forward, her body tense. "You don't control me anymore." Spectre let out a cold laugh, his form flickering. "I don't need to control you. I only need to remind you of who you really are. Deep down, you're just like me. And no matter how far you run, you will always return to the darkness." Raven's eyes narrowed. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. He was trying to manipulate her, to pull her back into the abyss she had fought so hard to escape. "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "I'm not like you. I never was." With a swift motion, Raven released a burst of energy from her quirk, her shadows crackling with an intensity she hadn't used in years. Spectre shrieked, his form unraveling further, but he didn't disappear entirely. There was a moment of hesitation as Raven stood over him, her breath heavy. "You've already lost, Spectre," she whispered, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "I'm done being your puppet. I'm done being your shadow." With a final burst of power, Raven crushed the remnants of Spectre's form, dissipating him entirely. Silence filled the room. Raven stood there for a moment, catching her breath, as the weight of what she had just done settled in. She had finally destroyed the part of her life that had haunted her for so long. But even as Spectre faded into nothing, Raven knew her journey wasn't truly over. Epilogue: A New Dawn. The sun rose over the city, the light spilling through the windows of Raven's new office at the Pro Hero headquarters. It was a fresh start, not just for the city, but for her as well. Raven sat at her desk, looking over the reports from the latest training sessions. She had come a long way, but there was still so much more to do. Her life as a mentor was just beginning, and she had more students to guide, more lives to impact. Her reflection in the window caught her eye. She had changed deeply, irreversibly, but she wasn't the woman she had been when she first arrived in Japan. She was no longer alone, no longer defined by her past. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts, and she turned to see Nick standing there, her usual cool expression softening into something resembling a smile. "Ready for the next mission?" Nix asked, leaning against the doorframe. Raven stood, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Always." As the two women walked out together, Raven felt something she hadn't in a long time: hope. There was still darkness in the world, still battles to fight, but she no longer faced them alone. And that made all the difference. The final Raven had emerged from the shadows, and in the light, she had found her place. The end.